Racial tensions are spilling into public view in the closely watched Democratic primary for a U.S. Senate seat in Texas. The race is a face-off between two rising stars of the Democratic Party, State Representative James Talarico and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Here to break down the controversy, Caroline Vakil, campaign reporter here at The Hill. Hey, Caroline. So this all started with a video posted on TikTok last weekend. Take it from there and tell us how we got to where we are now.
Well, of course, let's start with the TikTok influencer. Her name is Morgan Thompson. She essentially alleged in a series of videos recently that she had a private one-on-one conversation with the state representative, James Talarico. And she said during this conversation, she alleged that essentially Talerico had referred to the former Congressman Colin Allred, who ran for Senate last cycle, as, quote, a mediocre black man, while praising Congresswoman Crockett. She essentially went, live with these allegations. We saw the former Congressman Allred respond to these allegations on X, basically ripping the state representative Talarico over them. And you saw Talarico issue a statement saying, essentially, this was a mischaracterization of remarks he made. He said that he was referring to Allred's campaign of, method of campaigning, but not about, Allred as a person personally. And so, we're seeing this sort of tension playing out in real time amid other factors that have been, creating escalating pressure within the Democratic primary. And it's sort of the latest thing to roil this Democratic contest between Talarico and Crockett.
Yeah, so Talerico and Crockett, these are two Democrats with big megaphones. Both have huge social media followings. How has this controversy played out inside the Democratic Party?
For a lot of members, this is essentially a bit of a, eyesore. I think it's a bit of a headache for Democrats. They were riding high this past weekend because they had just flipped a Trump-won state Senate district, and the party was feeling great. And then, a couple days later, now the party is roiled with infighting again between the two leading Senate candidates looking to take on whoever comes out of the Republican nomination for Senator John Cornyn's seat. So this has been a headache, an eyesore. It's definitely frustrating members of the party. We're seeing it divide members of the party, some who have taken Talarico's side, others who have taken, Allred's side. Jasmine Crockett, of course, came out in support of Allred in her statement without naming Talarico. But this is certainly not going to help them as they're trying to, go down to the finish wire in March 3rd for their Democratic primary.
Yeah, I know that something like this is so dynamic and difficult to predict, but can you say anything about how this might impact the race here in these last few weeks before people head to the polls?
Sure. So the primary is in early March. So, they have essentially a month to try to get themselves together. There is the difference between social media and real life. The question remains about how much it's going to penetrate actual voters on the ground. In terms of how this could impact them, we could see supporters who previously endorsed one of the candidates go over and endorse the other. So far, it's a bit too early to tell. Both candidates just released their latest fundraising filing reports, and Talarico had a little bit of an edge there and maintained a bigger cash on hand. He's seen by many Democrats as sort of the more competitive Democrat that they want to put forward in the primary. But, this is going to be hard fought and hard won coming in the next month.
Can you give us, you talked about the fundraising numbers there, can you give us a little bit more of the lay of the land in this race, how the candidates compare, not just in fundraising, but also in polling, things like endorsements?
Sure. So in terms of polling, there was a recent poll that came out that had suggested the two are actually more evenly tied. There had been some polling previously, including with Emerson College Polling, which we partnered with, that had suggested Talarico maintained more of an edge. But this polling is kind of showing that the primary is coming down to the wire. Both candidates have gotten sort of top-notch endorsements from highly consequential groups. So this is in some ways sort of a campaign of two sorts, one over persuasion and one over mobilization. And so I think that that is sort of the kind of lens in which the primary is being looked at right now. But of course, this controversy could change that calculus for supporters going into the final stretch before March.
Remind us why this race is so closely watched. I feel like we might have seen this movie before in Texas. Democrats have a candidate that makes a buzz on social media, but that doesn't necessarily translate to Election Day. The seat right now is currently held by a Republican, John Cornyn, who's been in that seat for many years.
Right. I mean, to your point, we have seen this movie play out many times before. I think the difference here is that Democrats are feeling bullish for a couple reasons. They're coming out high right now over the past weekend from a state Senate special election that they flipped. President Trump had won that district by double digits. But also, they see a sense of a pathway for the party because there's also a contested Republican primary on the other side for John Cornyn. He's trying to fend off two challengers between Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton and Congressman Wesley Hunt. And so it's not a for sure thing that he is going to make it out of his own primary. And Democrats are hoping that that Paxton could be the nominee and it make it even easier for them to potentially try to flip this seat, which is something that Democrats haven't done in years. Now, of course, they've got an extremely tough hill to climb regardless. But, this contested Republican primary is helpful for Democrats. At the same time, the contested Democratic primary is helpful for Republicans, and that squabbling isn't going to be good for either party who are trying to make gains in the Senate this year.
All right, this is a race we will continue to watch up until Election Day, but for now we will leave it at that. Caroline Vakil, thanks so much for your insight.
Thanks for having me.